required.
I thank the honourable member. The House now does come to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands the name of Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Will he agree to the requests of former Minister the Honourable Dr Nick Smith and others for an inquiry about the Minister's role in the ACC case of Bronwyn Pullar and surrounding issues? If not, why not?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, no. First, I've accepted Dr Smith's resignation because of his errors of judgment, which deals with those matters. And secondly, there are independent investigations underway by both the Privacy Commissioner and the police into other related matters.
Grant Robertson.
Will the inquiry being undertaken by the Privacy Commissioner look at whether any of the following had an influence on how Bronwyn Pullar's case was handled? Nick Smith's letter on her behalf, her connections to other National Party MPs, her connection to the former National Party President, her connection to board members of ACC, and if not, isn't an independent inquiry necessary?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, that would be a question best directed to the Privacy Commissioner about what matters they are covering. And the member can get answers to the other questions by asking ACC or asking Ms Pullar.
Grant Robertson.
Will the inquiry being undertaken by the Privacy Commissioner address the issue of why two senior ACC managers attended the meeting in December 2011 with Bronwyn Pullar and former National Party President Michelle Bogue well before any privacy issues had arisen, and if not, isn't an independent inquiry necessary?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't think that meeting warrants an inquiry. For those of us who are familiar with constituents who persist over many years with particular complaints, I'm not surprised to hear that ACC sent a senior manager to a meeting with someone who'd clearly been corresponding with them over issues for many years.
Grant Robertson.
Will the inquiry being undertaken by the Privacy Commissioner look at the role of a board member in setting up a meeting between two senior ACC managers with Michelle Bogue and Bronwyn Pullar, and whether those senior managers were aware of the Minister's letters and interest in her case, and if not, isn't an independent inquiry necessary?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the matter before the Prime Minister was the issue of conflicts of interest for a minister. It was established that those conflicts had not been dealt with appropriately, and the minister involved has paid a heavy price for it. That matter doesn't warrant further inquiry.
Question, Mr Speaker.
Grant Robertson.
Why will the Prime Minister not accept that an independent inquiry is necessary to restore the public trust and confidence in the processes of ACC and the transparency and accountability of his government?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the transparency and the accountability of this government has been well established by the fact that a minister was demonstrated not to have dealt with the conflict of interest appropriately and has now resigned as a minister. And with respect to the ACC, actually the irony here is that it's Ms Pullar who has got a lot of interest in how the ACC works and has over a number of years proven to be a persistent litigant with ACC.
Grant Robertson.
Even if he doesn't accept any of the other reasons for an independent inquiry, doesn't he think he owes it to his former ministerial colleague Nick Smith to hold the independent inquiry that he is asking for?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, for the reasons that the Prime Minister that I'd set out on behalf of the Prime Minister earlier. Dr Smith has now resigned because of his errors of judgment. And secondly, independent investigations are underway by both the Privacy Commissioner and the police into any related matters.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
If the Privacy Commissioner is restrained to issues of confidentiality and the police are restrained to issues of criminality, why is he trying to flannel this Parliament by saying that's a good enough inquiry on the issues of political impropriety?
The Honourable Bill English. Well, Mr Speaker, the matter of political impropriety has been dealt with swiftly and with serious accountability, in contrast to how those matters used to be dealt with by the previous government.
Kevin Haig.
Supplementary. What advice has he taken on whether the Privacy Commissioner has the legal power to consider ministerial responsibility and interference in ACC claims, and what was that advice?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the issue of ministerial responsibility is fundamentally one to be dealt with by the Prime Minister, not the Privacy Commissioner, and the opposition are carrying on as if no action has been taken. In fact, a minister stood in this House yesterday and took the most serious punishment a minister can take, and that is resignation from the executive and from his portfolios because of his acknowledged errors of judgment. That is how the issue of ministerial responsibility has been dealt with.
Kevin Haig.
Point of order, Mr.
Point of
Speaker.
order, Kevin Haig.
The Prime Minister's answer did not address the issue of what advice had been sought.
I accept the fundamental point the member made, although his question went on to what advice had been sought with respect to, and the final part of the question related to matters of political.
Speaking to the point of order, Mr. Speaker, the final part of the question was what the advice had been, if there had been.
In the case of doubt, I invite the member to repeat his question.
Supplementary to the Prime Minister, what advice has he taken on whether the Privacy Commissioner has the legal power to consider ministerial responsibility and interference in ACC claims, and what was that advice?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I can't answer that question on behalf of the Prime Minister for sure. I can't actually say whether he has taken advice on that matter, but it's quite likely that any advice asked for on that matter would tell us what we already know, and that is responsibility for how ministers behave fundamentally lies with the Prime Minister, not the Privacy Commissioner, and the Prime Minister has dealt with the issue. The opposition may not have realised that the Minister was resigning yesterday, but that's what happened.
Supplementary.
Kevin Haig.
Supplementary. Is the Prime Minister confirming that there will be no government-ordered independent investigation into the conduct of Dr Smith in respect of ACC claims?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister has conducted his inquiry into the conduct of Dr Smith, and the result of that inquiry is that Dr Smith resigned from his portfolios and resigned from the executive. There are no other measures that can be taken with respect to ministerial responsibility. They have been taken.
Kevin Haig.
How can the public have confidence that ACC claims will be administered in a politically neutral way when there has been no investigation into the extent of political interference in claims?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister has considered the circumstances around Dr Smith's actions. Dr Smith has considered those actions. There are no and that has led to the resignation of the Minister because the conflict of interest was not handled appropriately. I might note that if you ask Ms Pullar, Ms Pullar's public statements indicate that she remains deeply dissatisfied with her treatment by ACC, despite, I think, 3 years of communication with the Minister.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
In light of the Prime Minister's description of Nick Smith's letter as improper, inappropriate and in error, which resulted in his resignation, how does the Prime Minister differentiate that from the affidavit given to the Supreme Court by the Attorney-General in support of his friend Bill Wilson?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker,
insofar as the Minister can answer that,
that's right.
It's a fair way from the primary question.
It's unlikely that the member's question be as much resemblance to reality.
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister has dealt with the matter of the Attorney-General's support of his friend Bill Wilson by way of affidavit.
Order. The member will resume his seat. Now, it doesn't take, it's not that difficult to read the primary question and see the primary question has nothing to do with the Attorney General, nothing to do with Bill Wilson, and you know, to ask a supplementary question that is so far away from the primary question is, I could have ruled it out, but I didn't. Maybe I should have ruled it out. I would have avoided the answer that was perhaps unhelpful. But the question is too far from the primary question. If it helps deal with the situation, I think we should. The minister's answer perhaps could be ruled out, and the question could be ruled out, because I think the question was out of order.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question.
We'll go back to scratch. Mr. Speaker, why is the treatment of Nick Smith fair if he has to resign for providing a letter of support in an ACC case, but the Attorney General doesn't have to resign for providing an affidavit for his friend in the Supreme Court?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm advised that the assertions made by that question are incorrect.
Question number 2, Kanwaljit Singh Bakshi.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister.